So welcome, David Lion. Pleased to have you on. It's good to finally have a chat. You came on my radar quite a while ago. I saw a little video of you in some cafeteria thing, maybe, or open dorm area of a university where there was a big crowd of people around, and you had some guy there who you're gonna do a little bit of hypnosis on, and
Yeah, and
foot stick on him, and then made him forget his name, and blew all the little college kids away. It was the first time I'd seen somebody not be able to remember their name. I've seen it plenty of times since now, because this is my world, and I've done that. But you were the doorway to show me what this sort of thing is possible, and it was done in a really fun, lively way. So that grabbed my attention with you. But then from there, I watched your thing change, that you weren't just magic and hypnosis. You started to understand magic is not just tricks, and you found that energetic side of life, and cracked open that spiritual shell, and started following intuition and truth and spirit of life. And so I'm excited to have you on to talk about that, because it crosses over all the different pathways of what messages I'm trying to get out with this podcast. So welcome, David.
yes, thank you.
Thanks
You.
for
It's great to
joining
be
us.
here. Yeah, awesome. I had no idea that opened the doorway for you. Was seeing making someone forget their name and that crack things open. That's fascinating to hear.
Yeah, well, I came from a very clinical approach where it was just basic to begin with, not seeing the potential creative power of the subconscious, of how much can be there, of what's actually fluid in what we deal with our consciousness.
Yeah, definitely awesome.
So we'll start way back at the beginning. Let's
Sure.
start at the beginning of where this doorway opened for you. So from what I've heard, it started with magic.
Yeah, I guess you could say my path started as a magician. I was, I was in high school, and what was going on in my life as I was really just trying to find my thing and like what made me special. Because where I was at was, I was pretty heavily bullied. I didn't have very many friends. I felt very insecure, and all I really wanted was like friendship and connection. And I saw that all the people around me who did have those things all had a thing. They were all either like basketball players or rappers, or they had something that they can do. And so that's what sparked the interest. And so I became passionate about finding my passion. And that's what led to me eventually finding David Blaine, who is the man who inspired the path for me. One day I was just sitting at home and kind of down and out because I thought maybe I didn't have a thing. And right when I was in that place of surrender, my mom yelled down the stairs. She's like, David, you got to turn on the TV. There's this new magician on TV named David Blaine. And I was just kind of like, I don't want to see. He's probably just going to try and copy David Copperfield. And she's like, no, you don't understand. He's doing street magic. And I'd never heard of street magic at that point. And so when I turned on the TV and I saw him, I was just completely blown away. And it was an instant, that's what I want to do. And so that's what put me on the path of magic. Really, this desire to connect with people. So I became really good at it pretty quickly. Synchronicity is really what put me on the path. I ended up finding myself at the right place at the right time. For example, I showed up to school one day after seeing David Blaine, and as I'm about to go to class, suddenly I see there's a magician in my cafeteria doing David Blaine-like things. And he ended up being the one who taught me my first trick. And so there was lots of that happened, synchronistic steps of me becoming a magician. And then that eventually evolved into other things. I'm not sure how deep into the story you want me to go, so I'm kind of giving you a summary.
Go deep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so yeah, it was powerful for me because yeah, so first it started off with, learning from that magician I saw in my high school. And I learned a bunch of card tricks, and all I could do was cards. And I would just practice and practice and practice and practice, maybe showing a few people here and there, but not really performing for strangers yet, like
Mm-hmm.
mainly like my girlfriend or my family members. Um, and then it got to a point where, my friends would be like, "Oh, that's cool, but could you do anything other than cards?" And I was just kind of like, "No." And so again, my search continued. I'm like, went to the libraries, went to the bookstores, and still couldn't find anything very David Blaine-esque. And and again, I just had this point of like surrender, and I was just like, all right, I let go. And as soon as I let go again, one day I was walking into the mall, and as I was walking into the mall, I saw an old friend of mine who I hadn't seen in like 2 years. This girl named Christina, and she was with her new boyfriend who I never met. And she's like, "Oh wow!" She's like, "Lion, I haven't seen you in a long time. This is my new boyfriend, Sasha. He's a magician."
Nice.
Right. So magic really found me. He was the guy who ended up teaching me the performance you may have seen, where I borrow someone's $5 bill and I turn it into 100,
Yep.
and which ended up taking me a long way. And so yeah, from there, that's how I became the magician. And I eventually, after 5 years of practicing, just in my room or with my girlfriend or whatever, after 5 years of doing that, eventually I got the courage to perform for strangers and the people who I wanted to make friends with in college. And then that's what kickstarted my life into where I am today.
Excellent. 5 years. That's quite a time of listening to that inner critic a little bit too much, by the sounds of things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was just, I was terrified to perform for people because, I had, like I said, I had been so heavily bullied, mainly psychologically, not so much physically, like, but just, made fun of and told I was not good enough. And so I was so terrified of performing for strangers because it's like I felt like I couldn't take any more rejection.
Yeah.
And, so for those 5 years, it was just perfecting and perfecting and perfecting and perfecting until it got to the point where I'm just like, I was tired of living in this hamster wheel. I was tired of like going one day, one day, one day,
Mm.
and so the icebreaker for me was when I was going to this college. Where the video you're talking about took place in Dawson College in Montreal. That's where I was going to school,
Yeah.
and as I was there was this pattern that I would repeat where every day after class, I would come down, I would look in the cafeteria, and I would see all the cool people, the hot chicks, the basketball players, and I would think to myself, I'm like, man, if only they gave me a chance. And I'm like, I know they would love me, and I'm like, I'll perform for them tomorrow. And and tomorrow just kept repeating. It was just constant, just like, okay, tomorrow I need to practice more. Okay, tomorrow I need to practice more, until a whole semester went by and I realized that nothing was changing, and that nothing was going to change unless I changed. And it just got to this point where the pain of living that life was so much more painful than just going for it. I'm like, you know what? I just can't do this anymore. I have to see if I'm going to get rejected and fail, or if I'm going to kill this. And that's what kicked it off. Was just one day, same thing again. I went down to the cafeteria. My knees were still shaking. I was still terrified. It's not like I got some spontaneous confidence boost. I was just as terrified, but I ended up walking up to these two girls and asking them. I thought they would be the least intimidating people to perform for out of all the people that I saw in the cafeteria. And I walked up to them and I was just like, um, do you have a $5 bill I could borrow? I want to show you something interesting. And for whatever reason, they gave it to me. I guess I didn't seem very intimidating. and they gave me the bill. And what I didn't realize in that moment was that as soon as I took their bill and rolled up my sleeves and started showing my hands empty in a certain manner, that people would realize that I was performing something. And so all of a sudden, my performance for two people turned into about like 50, 60 people circled around me. And I was just like, I remember very vividly in my head being like, this is it. This is make it or break it. And and so I like just took whatever courage I had and I folded up the bill, and when I unfolded it, it turned to 100, and the whole school just went lit. And that was it. That was the day that I saw the power I have and the potential I have. And it was, the day that I went from being the most invisible guy in school to the most popular guy in school. um which began a whole other journey of me going deep into my ego. but but that's how it all started.
Fantastic. So for those listening at home that are struggling with that procrastination, and they've got some skill, whether it's magic or hypnosis or
Mm,
whatever they've got that they just haven't put out there.
mm.
Once you crack that shell, was it way easier than that voice inside had been telling you for that 5 years while you were just practicing, practicing, and practicing?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I definitely made it so much worse in my head than it actually was. I think we all do that to some extent,
Oh, we do.
especially in that kind of situation. Um, and it really taught me the value of courage. Because it's not like, you know, I was waiting for my fear to disappear, but that was the wrong way of, or, for me, that was the wrong way of doing things. My fear never disappeared. The thing that changed was my courage. The thing that changed was my fed upness of my situation. And, and so it taught me the value of courage, because had I not had that courage to live my truth, then none of that would have happened. And so that became a big part of my path, is to constantly have the courage to do things that I'm afraid of.
Yeah, fantastic. And so, from the magic of cards and money tricks, where did hypnosis start to fall into this
Yeah.
category?
Yeah. So that was interesting because, I never thought I would become a magician. I grew up watching magic, David Copperfield and whatnot, but I never looked at it and was like, oh, that's what I'm going to do one day. I just loved magic. But I do remember a vague memory when I feel like I was like 5, 6, seeing a hypnotist on TV. And it was right around the time that I had just learned to snap my fingers, which was, a really big thing for me at that age for whatever reason. And so it's like I remember learning to snap my fingers, and then one day seeing a hypnotist on TV and just seeing this brief performance of him snapping his fingers and saying the word sleep, and someone going into a trance and going like, whoa, like that would be cool to do one day. And I forgot about it. Like it was a little memory in my subconscious, right? So where hypnosis came from was, after I finally performed for my first crowds of people, my life started to take off what felt pretty fast. Like all of a sudden, friends came in, girlfriend, people who wanted to film me started to get gigs. And this is also around the time that YouTube was coming out, or starting to get bigger. And so I made a YouTube channel. It got very popular. I started to get booked on TV and performing for celebrities and that kind of stuff. And then in 2008, one of David Blaine's teachers, a man named Jano Blazada, he's the one, he created certain effects for Blaine. He happened to see my YouTube channel, and he sent me, and I knew who he was, but he happened to see my YouTube channel and he sent me a message. I don't remember through what means, but he sent me a message, and he was just like, "Hey, I saw your YouTube channel. You're amazing. I'm holding this private training event in Vegas that's exclusively for magicians who are already skilled on a certain level and who want to take it to the next stage of their game." And he's like, and as a bonus, he's like, two of the students are actually master hypnotists, so they're going to be giving us a lesson. And I was just like, what? I've always wanted to learn hypnosis. And and that was a big period of my life, because I think the event was something like 2 grand, and I had $0. Like I didn't have a job. I was in school. I literally had nothing. And all I had was education funds that my grandparents had put away for me, when I was born. And I knew I wasn't going to continue going to school. I knew that I wanted to pursue this path of my passions. And so I ended up having to have this whole conversation with them that led to them giving me the money, which was, again, a courage step,
Big time. Yeah.
yeah, because it's not like like I like to highlight that part just because I there's so many people who I hear just like like, oh, I would do that, but I don't have the money.
Mm.
But it's like I've always loved the quote that says like if it's important to you, you'll find a way. If it's not, you'll find an excuse,
Yes.
right? So I found a way. I was committed to it and ended up going out to Vegas. And I'll never forget. Like it's so etched in my memory. I showed up, and I my flight was only able to show up a little late, so I think I showed up like an hour into the training or something like that, and got to Vegas, and I was just excited to meet Jay. And there was a room full of about 20, 30 magicians. And I remember I got into the room and Jay came, he greeted me. He's like, "Hey, Lion, what's up?" And he pulled me to the side and he just kind of like welcomed me. And he's like, "You see those two over there?" He's like, "They're master hypnotists." He's like, "They're the world's fastest hypnotists. They could hypnotize anyone in less than a second." And I was just like, what? And it was like this father and son. And the son at the time was 12 years old. And he looked like, like a little Bruce Lee. He had like a dragon shirt on and stuff. And I'll never forget, during the break, I went up to him and I sat next to him at his table. Everyone was kind of mingling and he was just kind of sitting there. So I went up to him and I was all like excited. And I was just like, I'm like, "Hey, man," I'm talking to him like a 12-year-old, I'm like, "Hey, man," I'm like, "I hear you're one of the best hypnotists in the world." And then he just looks me dead in my eye and he's just like, "I am the best." And I was, and just like and it wasn't cockiness. It was just this like, almost like I just asked him the most ridiculous question in the world. It was such certainty and it sent chills down my spine. I was just like, whoa, this kid is serious. I don't know who he is, but he's next level. And, I asked him, I'm like, "Oh, will you guys be teaching us hypnosis?" And he's like, "Yeah, on the Sunday, me and my father will be giving a 1 hour demonstration and we're going to show you our unique method, which is called ZAP, on how to bring someone into trance instantly. And if you want to get hypnotized, you could just volunteer." I'm like, "Oh yeah," I'm like, I want to get hypnotized, but I don't, I said the thing that everyone says, right? Like, "I don't think it'll work on me. My mind's too strong," and da 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 da. And he's like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." Um, so I'm like, "But if it does work, I would love for you to take away my fear of spiders." and um, and so sure enough, the Sunday rolled around and they were giving a presentation on what hypnosis is, why it works, and that kind of thing. And they were showing a video of them doing their ZAP technique, very, very prolifically installing hypnosis in our heads. and and then when it came time, they're like, "Do we have any volunteers?" Before you could even finish the sentence, I just boomed my hand up, and I'm just like, "Me, let's go." And so they invited me up and I sat in this chair in front of the room full of about 30 magicians. And I thought the father who was presenting was going to come and hypnotize me, but he looked at me, he looked at his son, he looked back at me and he was just like, "You could take this one, son." And in my head, I was just like, "You're sending the 12-year-old to hypnotize me?" And and it was very much a pattern interrupt, like, just because I was expecting the father, and the kid comes up to me, and I had a hard time taking him seriously. I was already kind of giddy, and I'm like, it's a 12-year-old, and as I'm sitting down, he just very again looks me dead in my eyes, just like, "Will you listen to all my instructions?" I'm like, "Sure, kid." And he put his hand out, suggesting that I take his hand. I take his hand, signals me to take a deep breath in. I do so, yanks my arm, says sleep, and I go straight out. And it was amazing because it was nothing like I expected. And yet it was, I started to go through the whole like, "Oh, I'm not hypnotized. I'm just really comfortable. I could open my eyes if I want. I just don't want to." It's like one of those sensations, but it was clearly a different state in that it felt like, when you're driving down the highway with the windows open and then suddenly you close the windows and there's that vacuum, that kind of, that's what it felt like for me. Whereas there was just this kind of switch. And so like, as much as I was aware of the room and everything around me, I went into this heightened state of awareness. And then sure enough, the father came over, put his hand on my shoulder. And then it was like his words became my thoughts. And he was just like, "David, I want you to realize your fear of spiders is a illogical fear. Nod your head once you understand." nodded my head, and he said it. He repeated it like 3, 4 times, snapped his fingers, eyes open, wide awake, and that was it. And it's like there's not like there was spiders in the room to test it out, but what they did afterwards is they taught us all their technique and their zap technique, and keep in mind, this wasn't like a full hypnosis training. This wasn't learning rapport and embedded commands, and this was just the technique of bringing someone to trance. And so they taught the technique, and then they had us go and practice it. And I thought, I'm like, oh, there's no way this is going to work. They basically just told us to pull someone, have someone do a little thing with their hands, pull it and say sleep. And every single person who I went up to and I did this technique on, they all like went into deep like flopper trances where they're like flopped, and it blew my mind because I couldn't understand for the life of me why it was working. And like, why is it I could go up to someone, pull their arm, say sleep, and all of a sudden they go into this trance where now I could click my fingers and my words become the reality. And that desire to understand the why of hypnosis is what became my obsession and why I ended up taking hypnosis as far as I have so far.
Fantastic. So where did you learn from after that? Did you have mentors? Did you just go to a class? What sort of thing?
Oh yeah, I went all out. Like I literally devoured every piece of knowledge I could find, every book, every DVD. I went back and I invested thousands and thousands of dollars in training seminars. Like I literally did everything. It was an obsession, like beyond passion, obsession. But where I definitely learned the most was in the street.
Yep.
Because the one thing that I was trying to understand was the intuitive understanding of hypnosis. And that was something that no mentor or book was able to teach me. Like I wanted to understand, how do you know when to use what technique? Like, what are you feeling for? Like, I don't want to just rely on step by step or do this, do that. You know what I mean? It was too mechanical. And no one was explaining it to me in a way that was resonant. Like every hypnotist said the same thing, like hypnosis is bypassing the critical faculty in the mind so that I'm like, speak English. So while I learned tons of techniques, I found myself constantly looking for the best technique and constantly getting stuck in my head when it came time to actually perform hypnosis. And so what I eventually ended up doing was one of the mentors who I studied with, a man named Justin Trans, he said 3 words that absolutely changed my life, which was dare to fail.
Yes.
He simply said, dare to fail, like, just go out there and do it. He's like, you don't need to learn more techniques. Just dare to fail. Even if you fall on your face, you're still moving forward. And so I took that to the extreme. And, in Canada, we have Boxing Day. Do you guys have Boxing Day?
Yes.
The day after Christmas? Okay, cool. So I went to the mall on Boxing Day, which is a frenzy. And I chose that as the day to go and practice my hypnosis. And that's how I ended up really starting to tune into the mastery of hypnosis, because I went in there and I succeeded many times and I failed many times. But it was through doing that I started to just tune into this intuitive knowing of hypnosis, where I was able to sense and feel. I'm like, oh, that's what I'm looking for. Oh, that's what I'm feeling for, beyond what was taught in the books and stuff like that. So that's when I started to get really good at it.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Justin's great. I had him on. I spoke to him 2 or 3 days ago.
So, amazing.
He's told me all about his sort of stuff, and I've looked into him as well. And he's a fantastic person to mentor for early on, to really break that mold and see that different
Absolutely,
approach.
Yeah, he's super unique. Yeah.
Yeah. So from there, you just went out and kept playing and fine-tuning what you did?
Yeah, I just went out and I was just constantly, again, it was an obsession, so I was like, I really mean it. I was just always hypnotizing. I was inviting people over to the house to get hypnotized. When I was out, I was never not hypnotizing. And yeah, and that's where there was a moment where hypnosis ended up becoming one of my spiritual catalysts, um, where so yeah, I made a bunch of, that's where my whole YouTube channel, more of my YouTube channel came from. I started to put out the hypnosis videos and whatnot, and that's what really took off people, because that, it was so unheard of in that time.
Mm.
Um, and so then eventually people would reach out to me like, oh, if I could help them stop smoking and this, that, and the other. Um, and there was a real pivotal moment for me, because between the ages of, I would say, 22 to 25, I'm 32 now, but between 22 and 25, those were what I call my ego days. That's when I was just really like, I went from being super insecure and invisible to the other extreme of my ego, to just full of myself, cocky, arrogant. I was a charming asshole.
Yep.
And so in that point in my life, I was not thinking about helping people or how I could help with issues. I just liked the spotlight. And so there was this pivotal moment where I was at my home, and my younger brother, had invited a bunch of his friends over to hang out and chill. And sure enough, he was just like, he's like, Dave, do you want to hypnotize them? I'm like, yeah, of course. So, we got the camera rolling, and there were these three girls, and two of their boyfriends were there, but the three girls wanted to get hypnotized. And so we're all in the room, and I dropped them all into a really deep trance. And I'm doing a bunch of skits with them. We're all laughing. It's all very comedic. I'm making myself invisible and, all the different things. And then there was a moment where I said words somewhat unconsciously, but like I said the words, I said the word sleep. And once they were in a trance, I'm like, next, I want you to go to a place that most feels like heaven for you. And what I didn't know was that one of the girls, her mom had just passed away recently. And so when I said, I want you to go to a place that most feels like heaven, all of a sudden the energy shifted, and there was just this instant, like, she's lying on the bed with her eyes closed, and all of a sudden she's just like, mommy. And she reaches and and grabs and just starts crying, and she's hugging, what appears to be nothing, but she's obviously with a spirit of some sort. And the whole vibe changed. And I just remember, like, we went from like intense laughter and comedy to all of a sudden everyone looks at me like, whoa, what are you going to do now, David? And I didn't know what to do, but my heart kicked in, my compassion kicked in, and I was just like, I very much freestyled it, but I was just like, I used that moment to give her the opportunity to have a final conversation with her mom, to have her mom give her advice, to have her mom crack jokes with her, and to get closure with her mom. And it was beautiful, and all on camera, which is awesome. But and then, once it was all said and done, I happened to walk her through it very well. And then once she got the closure, I changed scenes and I went back into entertainment for like maybe one or two skits, just because I didn't know what else to do. And then when I woke them up, I always do the same thing when I hypnotize people. I always give people complete amnesia for everything that happened until the moment that they shake my hand. Only once they shake my hand will they remember everything, because I think it's just a powerful convincer and a great finale.
Yeah.
And so, I'm waking them up on the count of 5, eyes open, wide awake, remembering to forget all that happened until the moment you shake my hand. And so at this point, we're all just waiting to see what the girl's reaction is going to be when she wakes up. And so I wake them up, and they all come up, and we're all looking at the girl, and she's wondering why we're all looking at her. And she's like, what's going on? She's like, why the camera's here? Why is everyone looking at me? Why is my face wet? And she's wiping her eyes. And then I'm kind of looking at her. I'm like, so you don't remember anything? She's like, no, I think I just kind of like knocked out. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, thanks for doing this with me. And I put my hand out. And as soon as she shook my hand, she was just like, all of a sudden she does this shake. She's like, oh my God, I just felt my mom. Oh my God, I'm gonna do everything to pass school. I'm gonna do everything to make her happy. And it was just like, she remembered everything and got this boost of empowerment from it. And it was just the most beautiful thing one of the most beautiful things I'd ever experienced in my life. And that really impacted me, because it really made me see that this is so much more than just an entertainment tool, that it really holds true to that saying of, with great power comes great responsibility.
That's a powerful moment.
Yeah. So that opened me up.
And so after that, that doorway had been open for you.
Hmm.
How quickly did things start to flood in of you being open to the everything else that's out there?
Yeah, that was definitely one of the catalysts. Because there are definitely multiple spiritual catalysts that were cracking me open
Yeah.
to the gifts that we all have inside and that I had amnesia for from a kid. And so I would say after that, I don't remember what year that was in. If I was about 24, okay, yeah. So this was close to 2000. My math, I'm not thinking math right now, but it was either 2010, 2011. But 2012 was when I had my major spiritual awakening. Um, January 11, 2012, 1/11/2012. Never forget it. Um, just so happens that 1/11 represents new beginnings,
Mm.
uh, numerologically. um, so the way it happened for me was I was at this point in my life where I had everything that I thought I wanted. You know, I was doing the celebrity thing, and I had a big YouTube channel. I had a hot girlfriend. I had friends, but I still felt empty. And it was like there was this void that I was constantly trying to fill. And and so what happened was I was I was dating this girl at the time, and she while I was dating her, she kept telling me that she was seeing demons, that she was seeing bad spirits, and I thought she was nuts. And I thought it was a cry for attention because she was that type of person. There was always something with her, So this just felt like an escalated version of her wanting attention. And so she would say things about demons and stuff. I'm like, okay, enough with the demons. And then eventually it got to the point where I just couldn't take it anymore. And I'm like, okay, I'm like, you know what? I heard of this energy healer dude, and I didn't believe in energy healing at the time. And I'm like, I heard of this energy healer dude. He's crazy. I'm like, you're crazy. Let me put you two crazy people together that maybe you guys could help each other. As you could tell, I was still an asshole back then.
Yeah.
And so I reached out, sent him a text. I'm like, hey, my girl's seeing demons. Can you help? He's like, yeah, sure, no problem. Bring him over. He didn't even ask any questions. I'm like, oh, this guy's going to be nuts. And, and I had this picture in my mind. I'm like, he's probably one of these like old white guys with a long beard and like crystals and hippie shirt. Like that's what I was picturing in my head. And when I went to go meet up with him, I was actually really surprised that he was just a regular dude. Like when I got to his house, he was literally like in track pants eating a Pop-Tart and just like very regular Armenian dude. And so that took down my guard. I'm like, oh, cool. He seems chill. And so this is where things got really magical because he brought us into his healing room, which is basically just a room with a massage table and a couch. And he tells my girl to lie down on the massage table while I sit on the couch and watch. Tells her to close her eyes. And then he closes his eyes and he starts to do this chakra DJ type thing above her body. It's like he's just waving his hands above her body, never touching her. And me as a performer, I'm going like, oh, that's a really cool performance, you know? But then at some point, shit got real because all of a sudden, no words were ever exchanged at any point, but yet he would, let's say, go over her chest, raise his hand above her chest, and all of a sudden her chest would move. And then he would put his hand by the side of her head and pull to the side, and her head would move to the side. And now I'm looking at this going like, how the heck did that just happen? Like they're not talking, both eyes are closed. This doesn't make any sense to me. So now I'm paying attention. And then after a few moments, all of a sudden, like I see her, she starts to like tremble. Her face gets red. It looks like she's about to go into a rage fit. And then she just breaks down crying, does a bunch of releasing. And then all of a sudden there's this palpable sense of peace in the air where like I could tell something just transformational happened and she felt better. And I'm just there like, what the hell was that? And so then at this point, he's after an hour runs up, he's just like, okay, you can open your eyes now. And then he explains to her, he's like, he's like, so I released things inside of you. He's like, but the reason why you were experiencing demons on the outside is because you had suppressed inner demons on the inside that you were completely ignoring, so they had to manifest in some other form. And I was just like, that makes sense. That's logical to me. I can accept that, you know? And so I was, so I was just like, cool. Like this guy is cool. He makes sense. Um, and so I paid him his money, and I'm like, thanks, dude. And I'm about to leave. And as we're about to leave his room, he closes his eyes and he turns to me and he's just like, we have information for you. And I was just like, in my head, I'm like, who the fuck is we? I'm like, it's just me and you in this room. And he's just, he's in this channeling state, which I hadn't heard of at the time. And he's doing this channeling thing and he just starts reading me. And he's just like, you think you're this macho, impressive magician who's a celebrity who gets girls and who da 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 da. But he's like, but really, the real you is soft and sensitive and is meant to help people and is designed to be a mentor and has gifts and abilities like me that you long forgot about. And I didn't know what he was talking about at the time as far as gifts and abilities went. But what he gave me in that moment, it was the first time in a while I had felt resonance. Because what he most gave me was this distinction between who I thought I was and who I truly was. I thought I was this macho, impressive magician, but the deeper me was this soft, sensitive dude that wants to help people. And I forgot about that. I'd rejected that when I was younger. And so what he left me with was this idea that the sooner I let go of who I think I need to be, the sooner I become more of who I truly am. And that's how I fill that void. And that's how I get on the path of purpose and fulfillment. And that was a major catalyst in my life. That changed my life. And he told me, he's like, you and I are going to be working together very soon. And I was just like, and I was still kind of like, I got what I needed from him, but I was just like, I don't know about all that, but like, thanks, dude, I'm out. And so what ended up happening was, in the weeks that followed, he kept sending me text messages when I was going through stuff, telling me what I was feeling. He's like, you're stressed right now. Oh, he's like, you're feeling frustration. And I kept like reading it and dismissing it as cold reading. I'm like, who isn't feeling stressed in their day? Who isn't feeling frustrated? So it didn't impress me. And then, but what got me, it was the way I chalk it up now is I feel like my spirit guides really needed to wake me up. And so they were causing next level shit to happen in order for this to happen. And so about a week or so after he had been texting me, there was a day where I was with my girlfriend at her house, and we had gotten into a really big fight, and I don't remember exactly what about now, but we got into a big fight, and I just remember I raised my voice and I left her house, slammed the door, and started walking down the street, and then I get a text, and it's from the guy, it's from the mentor, and he's like, you just got into a fight with your girlfriend. This is what you fought about. You slammed the door and left the house, and now you're walking down the street. And I was just, and we're on completely different sides of Montreal at that point. I'm just like, how there was no possible way he could know that. Yeah. And so then that's when I was just like, I'm like, okay. I'm like, I don't know what he's doing or how he's doing it, but he knows something that I don't, and I want to learn. And that was my entry point into learning real magic and spiritual gifts and just the science of magic, and that's how it ended up starting for me.
And it's much more powerful than a card trick, isn't it?
It's definitely I don't know if I would say much more powerful, but it's just because they each serve their own purpose, but like it's definitely it's definitely way more astonishing when you know that it's not a trick.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, what was your first experience with energy? As yourself, either as using it or receiving.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so he began to mentor me, and for the first year, it was all about balance. It was all about getting me out of my ego and helping me become more humble. because he had told me about these special energy classes that he did, but he said he wasn't going to invite me into the classes until I was more balanced. Otherwise, I would power trip.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yeah, whatever, And so he helped me learn healing, and he taught me various different spiritual principles. And then so for a year, I was doing this whole balancing act, and then finally there was a day where he's just like, okay, you're ready. I'm like, and I knew what he was talking about. I'm like, really? I get to go to the classes? He's just like, yeah, I'm going to invite you into an energy class. And mind you, by this point, after spending a year with him very closely, I had seen him do some next level magical shit. Like, now I knew it wasn't fake. I knew it wasn't, I knew he was a wizard of some sort. Like, I didn't know what it was. As reading minds, psychic ability, energy healing, all that kind of stuff. And so he invites me into his class. It was on a Tuesday, and I go in, and he has no website, no business cards. He just hand selects people and he brings them in. So I think we were about 12 people. I walk in, and I remember I came a bit late, and the first words that he said to me really pissed me off because he was like, he's like, oh, welcome to the class. By the way, don't worry, this is going to be really easy for you. And that made me mad because I'm like, don't baby me. Don't tell me it's going to be easy. Tell me it's going to take a lot of work. Tell me I got to work my ass off. I'm cool with that. I've seen the shit you do. That shit's not easy. And he's like, no, he's like, you don't understand. He's like, it's going to be really easy for you because it's something that you already do deep inside. You're not learning anything new. You're just remembering something you forgot that's already very natural to you. And I'm like, all right, sure, dude, if you say so. So we all sit down, and he leads us through this activation, which is kind of like a guided meditation. I actually have my version of that activation on my YouTube channel for whoever wants to experience the same thing. But he leads us through his activation to reignite our dormant spiritual gifts, our unconscious potential. And just through doing this one time, it was a very practical meditation that basically resensitized all the places inside that we numb when we're a kid, that we forget about, and that we forget that we even forgot, that we have complete amnesia for. So it re-stimulates and sensitizes all our dormant energetic senses that we forgot about, which ignites our connection with our higher self. And so he leads us through this thing. It takes maybe, 20 minutes or so. Very simple thing to do. And by the time it was done, then it's like, I don't know what happened. It was like this world just opened up, and then he starts like showing us different ways that energy works, how to create energy balls and play with energy balls and read people's minds. And what most blew me away was that, like, after this activation and learning a few tools that complement the activation, everything happened so easy. It was exactly like you said. Like, suddenly it's like I was able to perceive spirit guides again, and I was able to download people's energy. Like, he had us do this practice where we would pair up with someone who we didn't know, hold their energy in our hand. There's certain ways of doing this. Hold their energy in our hand, which is kind of like plugging into the hard drive of their consciousness, and then use our intuition to ask their energy any information we wanted to know about the person. And we did this as an exercise to prove to ourselves that this actually works. And so I would do something like, okay, tell me about Rita's likes. And then all of a sudden it was like there was this download that happened. It was like that just downloaded into my head. There was no thought. And I would feed it back to Rita, and she's like, wow, how'd you know that? I'm like, tell me your dislikes. It would just download in. And it was just the most magical thing I had ever experienced. And then I started to remember that these were the things I was doing as a kid, and that he was right the whole time. And so, so basically, needless to say, like, my gifts really developed in a very accelerated way. And what most inspired me was not only how easy it was and how fun it was, but how practical it was. That there was a grounded explanation for these things. It wasn't just, just open up your 7th chakra. You know what I mean? Like, it there was a science to the magic. And so by the end of his whole training, all I wanted to do was pay it forward and teach other people how to do it, because I'm like, these gifts are your birthright. Your magical nature, your spiritual, whatever you want to call it, is your birthright. And beyond that, learning these things is not only like learning real magic. Well, is not only learning real magic, but in order to learn them, you have to become a more compassionate, more playful, and humble person in order to access them. So it makes you a better person, which makes the planet a better place. And so that became my, that became my mission, and what I still do to this day is teach people what I call white magic.
Fantastic. I'm the same. Today, my day after we finish this is to go out, and I'm teaching distance healing for people. We're spending a day doing distance healing, and we've got a training room upstairs, and downstairs we've got clinic rooms where they're each going to go separately down in the rooms and be upstairs, send them some energy, then to come up and describe what they've each done to each other, and get that confirmation that this shit's real.
Oh, amazing. That's dope, bro.
So it's really amazing watching people open up and grow with that. With my class yesterday, it's just great seeing the change in people after they open up to their innate potential of using the energy that surrounds us.
Yes.
It's very powerful. There's some, I'll send you a video later of a different kind of energy thing you can do within your street magic to do some real street energy magic that'll wow people of cutting a cloud or making it disappear.
Oh yeah. I've played with that before, like vanishing like puffy clouds or putting holes in clouds and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That's really a fun way to prove how real this stuff is to somebody random on the street.
I used to do that, cloud busting, I believe it was called. But yeah, I've done that. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's always fun. And so you're also into meditation quite a lot, from what I hear now.
You could say that. I'm definitely not. I take a very playful approach to everything. Like I'm not someone as quote unquote spiritual as I am. I'm not like I don't do yoga. I don't meditate every day. I don't for me, playfulness is the key. But I am a big fan of meditation, and I deliver really dope meditations. But I use meditation when I feel called. When I feel called to go inside, I use them, and I love to use, I love to use meditation as permission slips or as catalysts to help people ignite their gifts and discover unconscious potential.
Yep.
As opposed to just relax endlessly.
Yes. So if you need to meditate personally, do you do somebody else's guided sort of thing, or will you sit quietly and listen, or what's your sort of method for yourself?
Yeah, great question. More often than not, I don't really have a method. Because of my training, I've gotten to a point where my mind is always silent. I'm not one of those people who get stuck in my head anymore, or who talks in my head, or who thinks. Everything is feeling for me. Yeah. And so my meditation practice has become different because of that, where when I go inside, the second I let go, just whatever information needs to come through comes through on its own. There's not really any I'm not sure how I would chalk it up into actually, hold on, let me sit with this for a sec. I want to say, like, I just follow spirit.
Yeah.
I go inside and I just follow wherever spirit wants to bring me. Or if I have a particular curiosity, like let's say I'm looking for clarity on something, I'll ask my guides to give me an example. And what my guides will do, they'll always present things to me in like a video game like fashion. Since our guides are playful, creative beings, they present things to me in playful, creative manners, as opposed to this is what you have to do. So I'll usually get these like strong visuals And inside the visual, it becomes a game because there's certain things I can do and certain things I can't do. Like I might try my last visual. I was in the Cave of Wonders from Aladdin because I had just seen the movie, so they used that as a template. And I was trying to understand something between me and my girlfriend, and I couldn't figure it out. So I asked my guides for help, and so I was brought into the Cave of Wonders, and trying to figure out, so for example, I tried to leave the cave and the mouth would close shut. So there's certain limitations built into this vision that they give me, and the whole objective is for me to figure out how to win the game, and and when you win it, it becomes a direct metaphor for what's going on in your actual life as far as how to win this game.
Yeah.
So that's the best way I could express what my meditations are like.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
So where do you see your path going from here? Is there something that's been grabbing your interest a lot at the moment that you're starting to walk down the pathway of, or?
Yeah, definitely. So my movement and my brand is called Living Magic, all about helping people discover where magic meets life, and essentially just introducing people literally to a whole new world. And I've since my journey, I do channeling and psychic sessions and all that kind of stuff now, and I guess you could say I'm serving a lot like a Professor Xavier from the X-Men.
Yeah.
Whereas I meet lots of gifted people, gifted intuitives and whatnot, but who generally have pain around them and their gifts, or they don't know how to consciously access their gifts at will, or they don't know how to do certain things that I can do, or there's just something blocking them from stepping into more of their magic and embodying their magic. Because there's a stepping point. First, it starts with finding your gifts, then it's using your gifts, and then it's being your gifts. So being your gifts is a whole other stepping point, and you could even look at it as a transition from going from being the magician to being magic. And so that's where I'm at now. Is one of the beings that I work with is named Thoth. I don't know if you've ever heard of Thoth.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we work very intimately, and what I do is I gather what I call light leaders, healers, people who are here to raise the consciousness of the planet, and hold different events. My next event is going to be a white magic dojo of sorts. Yeah, so basically what my passion is, and my mission is right now is simply to gather light leaders who are generally high achieving spiritual teachers and leaders who already have platforms, and I bring them in, and I teach them about what I call their infinite self, which is basically who are you beyond your label, beyond calling yourself a coach or a healer or a hypnotist. It's stepping into your infinite self, into that vibration. And then from that state of being, from that frequency, then using hypnosis and clairvoyant means and energy work, I call forth more of your gifts. And I have ways of showing people their soul's blueprint, so to speak, so that they could understand all the things that most trigger or ignite their gifts and magic, so that they can design their reality and their clients and their environment in such a way that it calls it forth more often. And I show them ways of just not just using their gifts just for work purposes, but if you want to just go hang out with your guides and just have a conversation and do it for fun, there's no reason why you can't do that either. It's meant to be playful. So I teach people about real magic and a lot of the distinctions between intuition and magic, because there are certain distinctions with that. And there was one more thing I was going to say on that point. Oh, the main thing that I love to do is really help them step into their fullest expression. Because a lot of times what ends up happening is you start to develop your gifts, and then you find your community or your tribe or your spiritual community where you feel a sense of belonging. And then all they do, and I did this too, is just share their spiritual gifts within that community. which is, but that becomes a comfort zone. And, whereas for me, the whole idea is to step out of that comfort zone. Like, now that you have the training ground of your spiritual community, to step out into the world and to be a shine, to be a lighthouse so the world can experience us. And to me, this is what I call reopening the doors of Atlantis. That's the core of my mission, is to reopen the doors of Atlantis within the consciousness of others, so that magic can be normal again. It can be commonplace again.
Fantastic. That's part of what this whole podcast is about. Stepping out of my comfort zone because that's where change happens. To open that growth opportunity up for everybody else to see all the different angles of where consciousness can be, and where you can amplify it to be your own unique self and make the most out of this magical time we have here on this here planet. And from what I've picked up from the chat here with you now and different things I've seen online of you recently, two huge parts of your message seem to be that dropping out of that serious mindset to go for the fun, and dropping out of the thinking and start to go with the trust.
Yes.
And they're two powerful places to be. And so I'd love people to tap into that a little bit more. But if you've got something quick you'd love to say about that,
yeah, absolutely. And good observations, by the way. That's very much what I'm about. Yeah, with the whole serious and fun thing, it's I feel like that's, like I've always said that, one of my core beliefs is that life is a vacation. A lot of people are like, oh, life is a pain in the ass. Life is this. And life's a vacation, and when you treat it that way, you experience it in a whole different texture. And, when you're on vacation, you have a lot of fun, and so I remember one time I had a client back in 2014. He found me through my YouTube channel, and it was this Hindu guy, and his wife was really sick, and he wanted to do like a discovery call with me. So I got on the call, and he's telling me about him, and he's telling me, and he asked for my help. And so I very quickly tuned into his wife, and I told him all the reasons why she is the way she is, and I tuned into him, and I just gave him a bunch of information, and he was just blown away. And he was just like, he's like, how did you do that? He's like, I meditate 2 hours a day, and I read the books, and I do all the things, and he's like, but he's like, you're like the Buddha, and and he's just like, you must meditate for hours on end. And I kind of laughed at him, not laughed at him, I kind of laughed, and I was just like, no, actually, I just play a lot of video games. And he looked at me like, what? In bewilderment. And what I explained to him, I'm like, one of the biggest missing pieces in people wanting to develop their spiritual gifts is they take it so seriously. I'm like, spirit is not a serious frequency. It's a very playful, creative, light frequency. I'm like, that's really the one of the biggest missing pieces is that, so you could do all the meditating and yoga and kundalini, this and that you want. But if you really want to experience results, it requires playfulness. And so that's why I'm really big on fun, and why I can get people results so quickly is because I know how to ignite that, seeing as I have an entertainer's background, And yeah, so that's a big part of where my fun message comes from, because it's like growth and spirituality doesn't need to be so serious. And the second part of the message that you were highlighting, as far as like thinking versus trust, or what I call thinking and feeling, yeah, that was a huge transition point for me as well, because it all goes back to those words that I said had impacted me and changed my life, which was, the sooner you let go of who you think you need to be, the sooner you become more of who you truly are. Now, if you look at your essence, if you look at who you were, if you look at your childlike essence, when we're kids, we're not thinking beings, we're not analytical. Everything is feeling, right? Like, that just doesn't feel good. Why? I don't know. I don't feel like it. It's everything's feeling. Our way of the world is feeling. So and then we get conditioned into to be more analytical. So the more we can reclaim our soul's essence and personality, and let go of, you know, the composures we develop of thinking you need to be tough or serious or proper or whatever those things are, the more we let go of who we think we need to be, the more we start to let go of the mind and the thinking that comes from those programs, and just go back to more of our natural feeling state, which allows for much more flexibility in our spiritual gifts and range.
Yeah, it's all very powerful. Once you start to tap into that and just go with the flow and be in line with what's happening in your life.
Yes.
And it sounds like you've had some struggles along the way to get in with that, like the beginning with the magic. But once you've got that lesson, it's really start to stuck in.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. And you know, and the challenges are endless. You know, it's like, you know, it's you know, as much as I believe, and you know, another one of my core beliefs is that life is designed to be effortless.
Yeah.
You know, and I place an emphasis on the word designed. You know, it's designed to be effortless. Life just flows. You know, but it's us that complicates things. And so as much as life is designed to be effortless, and a lot of the best things I found, you know, anytime I'm doing something and it's coming effortlessly because I'm just in that flow of passion and bliss, and it doesn't even feel like I'm doing or trying, that's when I create the most magic. It's when I'm pushing and trying and struggling that it's just not fun, and it's not fun. And for me, if it's not fun, it's not worth it. And so, yeah, but, you know, like anything, you know, like learning to walking is effortless, but in order to get to that effortless part, there's a lot of challenge.
Yes.
Right. So yeah, I still do experience lots of challenge and lots of flow.
Fantastic. You've given us all a lot here today, so I'm thankful for that. If there's one other thing you'd like to give of something, if they're starting out on a path like this, or where you'd like them to look, try, experience, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I'll give a cool. I'll give a few gifts. So there's two places I would love for people to check out. The one main place is my YouTube channel. That's my biggest platform, where I have tons of not just entertainment of magic, hypnosis, mind reading, but lots of spiritual truths, and also lots of spiritual activations. So people who are looking for genuine, practical means of ascension and evolving spiritually, I have on there the exact activation, hypnosis activation that I used back in 2012 to awaken my dormant spiritual gifts. It's the one I was talking about earlier. They could find that in two forms. There's one that's like a 20-minute audio called Awaken Your Energy Body, and there's one that's a live stream, which is an hour long, where I speak more about Atlantis, and it's more of an updated and upgraded version of the Awaken Your Energy Body. That one's called Soul Magic. So I would recommend the Soul Magic one, just because it's from a newer me giving that activation. So there's the Soul Magic I would love for people to try if they're wanting to accelerate their spiritual gifts. There's also a really powerful hypnosis meditation called Unlock Your Magic on there, which serves many purposes in terms of getting you more in tune with your gifts, and also just being able to approach life with a softer and lighter touch. You know, when things are feeling kind of harsh and struggle, this gives you a nice little reset. And yeah, just browse through my YouTube channel. There's lots of cool gifts on there. And for those who want to dive deeper with me, I'm going to be relaunching my website very shortly, which is simply livingmagic.life. So www.livingmagic.life. That's where all the stuff is going to be. Or if they want to keep up with my day-to-day and my spontaneous sharings, that's my Instagram @Lionism. Lion like the animal, ism like Buddhism.
Fantastic. I'll put the links to those in the show notes so they can find it easier. And fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure having a chat and getting to know you a little bit better.
Yes, likewise. Oh, and I wanted to mention too, if you don't mind. So I'm about to launch my healing hypnosis certification course. For anyone who might be interested, this is an ancient Egyptian inspired healing hypnosis modality that I call soul medicine. It was downloaded into me. So for any hypnotists or hypnotherapists or even just change makers who are wanting to learn a really powerful method of permanently releasing emotional trauma in a session, this is the method. I've used it to heal epilepsy, gallstones, rape trauma, anxiety, all kinds of things that I was told are impossible. So for people interested on that, that will also be on the site. And, otherwise I also have a hypnosis course and stuff like that. But yeah, just wanted to share that for anyone who might be interested. They could just reach out to me and we could have a conversation.
Fantastic. And that will be delivered online or in person?
Both. So I already pre-recorded the training in full HD. It was me teaching two people, so it's very fun and interactive and easy to watch. And for the certification process, there's 8 weeks of what I call vibrational training. So before I even give you the soul medicine teaching, very much in the same way where you could read a book when you're younger, and then when you're older, you read a book and you get something completely different out of it.
Yes.
So that's just because we're in a different state of consciousness. So the vibrational training is to get people from thinking to feeling, their head into their heart, and igniting them to a certain state of being their infinite self before I give the soul medicine training, so that they receive it in a certain kind of way. And it comes there's a luxury retreat included with it, and there's so it's a mixture of in-person stuff, of live stuff, and pre-recorded video.
Sounds amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'll if you send me the links to that, I'll put that on there as well.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure. Thank you, man.
Excellent. It's been a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure, man. Thank you for having me on. And what's up to your viewers? All right, man.